Let's go. Hello, hello. Welcome back to Hobbies with Jose, everyone. Glad to have you all back, and today we do have our customization, mostly repaint really, of Studio Series 83 Soundwave. And no, I don't have Studio Series Rabbits just yet, so I've got Masterpiece Rabbit here filling in the role for a bit, which is a fantastic figure. But first things first, we are going to start the disassembly process for Soundwave, but before we do, let's talk a little bit about what exactly we're going to be doing to him. As I mentioned in my review, which hopefully you got a chance to check out, I do think the bot mode is pretty much perfect. There is essentially no kibble on this guy whatsoever, which means there's not a lot of modifications that we need to do. It's really going to be just minor things, mostly used for the transformation, like these pegs here. You see these two pegs used for the transformation process, which kind of do hinder the look of bot mode a little bit. We're going to go ahead and clip those off and smooth them out. And on the back of the arms, you do have these peg holes where you put the weapons into alt mode. Since I don't care about the alt mode, I'm going to go ahead and trim these edges off and fill them in. I think the biggest real modification though is going to be the hollowness of the legs. They're either not too noticeable or extremely noticeable. So we'll be filling these in as well with putty and getting them as smooth as we can. But that's really it. Let's go ahead and get started. As always, we'll start with the easier stuff. We'll remove his weapon here. And the head is on a ball joint. I think I can pop it off. Head's on a ball joint, but it is tough to get a good grip on it, so we're going to hold off on this piece. These shoulder covers do come off pretty easily. And the back ones do as well. I think I'm going to start working on these screws next. And now you can see the detail that Soundwave had inside of that fake cockpit section. That's pretty cool how they had all this line work in here. Looks like this is two pieces glued together, so I'm going to leave it as is. And there's a tiny pin holding the back piece together, but I'm going to leave that part on as well since I won't be transforming it. It's only going to stay in this position. Next up, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws next. Now with the head removed, still attached to the neck, these two are going to have to stay together. I don't want to risk damaging it to try to pry it off, but I can always just paint around it, so that won't be an issue. And we've got a couple more screws in here. And even more screws still. This small piece right here is pretty small, so I'm not going to be removing it. I'm just going to leave it in place and paint around it. Same thing for this small piece here. It does have a pin, but it only goes in one way, so that's not going to be coming out. But for this piece behind the leg, even though I'm not going to keep the transformation, it's big enough where I do want to remove it. So this pin is going to come off. This smaller piece that stays inside the leg, I'm not even going to worry about it. That's going to stay right there. Now this is probably the most crucial piece to remove, and I do want to be careful with it, but this pin needs to come off. And lastly, we've got a couple other screws securing the mechanism for the eject button, so we'll go ahead and take these off too. Now the cover for the eject button, I thought I could just put it aside and not have to worry about painting it, but the top part of it is exposed on Soundwave, so I'm going to have to paint this part at the very least, and more than likely just mask out everything else. And we now have our figure disassembled and ready to strip the paint. The only pieces I won't be stripping the paint are of course the clear ones, more importantly the front ones, since I don't want to risk breaking it or fogging up the window here in the front. This one I'm going to have to paint it by hand. Now the clear piece that forms a cockpit, I'm not too concerned about, since again, I don't plan on transforming this figure ever again in the future, but I also don't want it to break as well, so I'll be keeping it to the side. So once again, I'll be utilizing my paint stripper, which consists of 9 parts 91% isopropyl alcohol and 1 part lacquer thinner. We're going to let them sit here for about a half hour and we'll come back and clean them up. And we're back. It's been about 40 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and empty everything out into this old Tupper of mine. Using an old toothbrush, we're going to brush away all of the excess paint that may be lingering onto the pieces. After scrubbing all of the excess paint from the pieces, we're going to clean them up a bit by spraying some all-purpose cleaner. I'll continue to brush off all of the excess paint stripper and then wash them with some warm water. Okay, so we are back a day later and I now have our pieces pretty much fully dried at this point. We're going to go ahead and start some of the modifications, starting with the hollow legs. One of the things that's a little bit concerning is the size of the gap here on the leg. I'll be using Tamiya's putty and I've got a brand new tube here as well, but it does tend to shrink as it dries. So if that happens and it dries up in a bit of a concave fashion, I may have to add a second layer. But with that said, let's go ahead and see what we can do. For the last bit of modification that I'll be doing today, and I didn't mention this before, but Soundwave has these little sections that are sticking up next to his head, and these are used for transformation, but he really doesn't have these in the movie, so I'm going to go ahead and clip these off as well. Alright, that's where I'm going to end it for today. I am going to give the pieces with putty a full day to dry, and I may have to add another layer like I mentioned before, but I'll go ahead and do that throughout the week. Next week we'll go ahead and start adding some primer onto our piece, and I think I should be able to start adding some color as well, so hope you can all join me for that. And if you like what you saw, well, you know what to do. Feel free to follow me on the socials. I am on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And check out my gaming streams too, where I'm still hunting machines on Horizon Zero Dawn. Not just on YouTube, but on Twitch as well. So thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone.